What is your "this person has no idea how the real world works" moment? Story 1. I have one that's kind of woken up from this. My dad. He used to be the typical boomer, always thinking I was just being lazy and not doing things right. Until he got injured and could no longer work in an industry he had 30 years of experience and seniority in. It took him several months to get a new job of any kind, and was shocked when he realized that he couldn't just negotiate for higher pay. He was fired on the spot when he threatened to organize a strike, and was barred from the premises. When he had to move, it baffled him that he couldn't just give the landlord a few $100 and move in right away, but he had to wait a week for his application to go through, and the landlord to do a background check. Probably my most satisfying one was when he finally decided to get into the industry I'm in, truck driving. He learned very fast that it wasn't like it is in the movies from the 80s. Truckers don't now nor ever have given a rat's butt about one another. Sure, some are nice to one another, but if it's a choice of you or them, don't hold your breath. Most big trucking companies in the US do not give a care about you or your family, and they're only concerned about your safety because it saves them money on lawsuits. After his third trucking job ended with him getting terminated and is now living off my income, he stopped giving me grief about my problems and is still job hunting. He was fired on the spot when he threatened to organize a strike and was barred from the premises. I know I shouldn't laugh. I'm pro-union as heck, but dang, someone didn't realize how hard you have to work to get there. Ooh, this feels good. This was a satisfying story to read. Finally, someone who's complaining that our generation is lazy had to go through all the stuff we go through. They have to see firsthand how the world actually works. I hope that he is more compassionate at least. Maybe that's why everyone calls it woke. This guy woke up and found out what the real world was like. Story 2. Had a friend who was in some uncredited online college scam for her master's degree in medical billing or some dumb crap. She was on a loan program that was sending her about $5,000 every 3 months directly to her via check in the email. This was her only source of income. She kept calling it a grant that didn't need to be paid back. She was flat broke as a joke for 2 months, but then the check would come in and she would be living the good life for a few weeks before being poor again. We tried to do an intervention and show her the insane interest rate that would be backdated as soon as her school was done, but she didn't want anyone to bust her free money dreams. She just kept talking about all the money she would eventually be making billing insurance companies. Turns out she wasn't even logging into the online college or even attempting to get this degree. She thought the money was free, the degree was automatic, and the job was guaranteed. Some people are beyond help. There is the phrase willful ignorance. I think this person personifies that completely. Why did she not believe her friends or those people that were caring about her? What reason would they have to lie to her? It's quite possible the follow-up story for this is going to be quite devastating. Story 3. Probably a friend of mine. He's 28 years old. He's been on benefits a long time now and has had amazing job opportunities and interviews he has either not gone to, turned down, or made an excuse to the benefit department as to why he didn't attend an interview because he doesn't see much point in a job and his benefits are spent within the month he gets them, sometimes on what he needs and rent to his mom, but the rest is on booze or games. In 2019, I was unfortunate enough to lose my only 3 family members and my dog, and I've tried to tell my friend repeatedly how much funerals, vet bills, house upkeep, utility bills, etc. cost, and his mom will not be around forever, and he needs to get a job because I struggle with my work wage to pay for stuff, so he won't stand a chance on benefits. My other friend who is also in a bad place financially and does work has also pleaded with my friend to get a job and told him how important it is to get one ASAP, as you don't want to be in a bad place down the line or have no pension saving up. Our friend just snaps at us and tells us it'll be fine because when his mom dies, the benefits will cover it all. We decided to leave him to it now and find out how far benefits get him when he has funerals and mega bills to pay. Oh, and we've got another one here. Really short-sighted. This person hasn't woken up yet. This is another one where the follow-up story is going to be quite explosive. I wonder if his friends are going to be supportive of him when it finally blows up or if they're just going to leave him to it. Story 4. I had a young girl who asked me, "Why don't you just buy a car? It's not that expensive," when I complained about my lateness. I then had her admit over a series of questions that 1. Her parents bought her car for her, 2. Her parents paid for the registration, 3. Her parents paid for the insurance, 4, and in return for driving her brother to school once a week, her parents paid for all her petrol money. This was the same girl who had her pay from her job paid into her parents' account, and was then allowed to withdraw as much money as she wanted to buy things. I bet she even knew how much we were paid. I had a coworker make fun of my glasses, saying, "They're ugly. You should get a new pair." Said, "I'd like to, but I can't afford it right now." Even with our company benefits, a new pair would still cost me several $100s that I don't have. She looked blank and said, "Oh, my husband's benefits are so often. He often gets glasses he doesn't need, just for the heck of it." Story 5. We had a relatively new hire where I work, a young woman relatively fresh out of college. Because we had been colleagues in another department when she was interning, she often ate lunch with me. She frequently complained about how bad her coworkers were. I didn't know them, but it seemed odd. After about a year, she applied for and got a different job at the company, but the new job didn't start for 2 months. She asked me if I thought she should take a leave of absence until then, because she didn't think she could stand working 2 more months with her current coworkers. I asked what they were doing that was making her so unhappy. She complained that they often told their mutual boss that she would come in late, take very long lunches, then leave early. "Do you do those things?" I said. "Well, yes, but they don't have to be shrews about it," she replied. Story 6. 2 things immediately come to mind. First, being a young girl I used to work with at Target. She was hired for the 6 a.m. to 30 p.m. shift, but she regularly showed up between 8 or 9 a.m. without any good explanation. After the 3rd time or so, our supervisor asked her if she had something to do in the morning, such as getting kids ready for school that required a later shift. If so, she could be moved to the 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. shift. The girl's response was, "No, I still want to leave at 2:30. I just don't want to get up that early." She was fired when she refused to acknowledge that you cannot make your own schedule. Second is one of my roommates, a 23-year-old who is quite literally unable to take care of herself in any capacity beyond ordering fast food. I once heard her yell at my mother because she was filling out a job application and got stuck on a section. Her mom was trying to help her finish, but she got frustrated and screamed, "Can't you just fill it out? I want to go play my games." Before you ask, no, there are no disabilities. She's just lazy, spoiled, and incredibly stupid. Oh, this one hurts to hear. Both of them. Just a sense of entitlement. I can't believe there are people that lazy and delusional. These people that are so caught up in their own safety nets. It feels kind of tragic to hear how they think that this safety net will hold them forever. Story 7. Back at the end of university, I met up with my rich friend who just got a brand new car for his dad worth £60,000 after getting his driver's license. So naturally, we went for a ride. At one point, he asked me, "What are you going to do after uni?" To which I answered, "Find a job in XYZ whilst investing, slowly growing side incomes." He got very confused then and asked me, "But why do you need a job? Can't you just start your business?" He had no idea of the struggle to pay bills and think about your budget, etc. To be fair, he might have known about bank business loans and how if you have a solid enough plan, you pay yourself a salary from it as you build the business. Very standard in the business world. Story 8. My brother is 26 years old and has had one job. He worked there for like 2 months. Our cousin helped him get hired. It was the easiest job in the world. A team of people drilled wells, agriculture, and my brother would come in at night and watch the equipment. He had a new RV to sleep in. They let him watch TV, bring his dog, smoke, drink, eat whatever he wanted. The only thing he really had to do was be there. He wanted to go to dinner with his girlfriend and asked for the day off. His boss told him no because he was the only person they had to stay there at night. He told his boss to frick off and quit on the spot. To this day, he doesn't work, pay bills, or do anything with his life. He smokes lit lettuce and plays old video games, like random racing games on PS2. Sad waste of life, in my opinion. Story 9. A student working part-time at my laboratory at a university came into my office and asked, "So what all can I eat in the refrigerator? I didn't know I was supposed to bring my own lunch." I looked at him, stunned, and replied, "Nothing. That food is what people brought for their own lunch. But you can use my Grubhub to order." He did not understand. It took 4 tries to get him to realize he can't just eat someone else's lunch. Same student walked into the lab room and told him I made a pot full of coffee in the office and he could help himself. Him, a pot of coffee? What's that? He never used a coffee maker other than a Keurig before, and didn't even know it was a thing. He was fired a month later for stealing chloroform. Well, that did not end the way I thought it would. Yeah, that last sentence in the story changes everything as well. Stealing chloroform. Why? I think he's going to get arrested later on in his life for some very nasty charges. And just the sheer belief that he can help himself to anything he wants. He seems to have no clue about personal property. I wonder if this guy was skinny or a rather large gentleman. Story 10. Mine is a coworker. He believes that any time his ex does something with their daughter and he doesn't agree with it, he needs to call Child Protective Services. Ex has daughter sharing a room with older sister? Time to call Child Protective Services. He calls late at night and kid is sleeping and ex won't wake her up? Time to call Child Protective Services. And caseworkers. Ex-current husband won't give the coworker his pay stubs? Time to call a caseworker. Dude has Child Protective Services and his caseworker on speed dial. The dude doesn't understand why cops and his caseworker keep telling him that since the child is not abused and or neglected, and his ex is doing everything the court has told her that she needs to do, there's nothing illegal happening. Dude is still trying to find ways to control the ex and what goes on in her house. Oh, he understands. It's a form of harassment. He's wasting your tax dollars on public services to harass his ex. Story 11. Sat in on an interview with a guy who was 18 or 19. He was applying for a job because his parents were going to kick him out if he was unemployed. That's fine. He's applying for entry level. When the hiring manager asked how many hours he'd be available to work in a week, he said he'd be comfortable working not more than 72 because he only wanted to work 3 days a week. When she clarified that 72 hours is literally 3 full days, he replied that he knew, but in that tone that tells you internally he thought she was an idiot for asking. No big surprise, but we did not hire him. Ran into him a few years later. He worked up to be the assistant manager at the car dealership I bought my most recent vehicle from. He remembered me, and when I asked how he got the job, he said he started dating a guy a while after not getting the job I'd seen him interview for that set him straight pretty quick, so at least he got over it. Story 12. Conversation with my mother one day. Subject around the table was about overfishing. Catches were drying up. Mom says the government should subsidize fish because fish is good for you. I respond that we're already overfishing, and if they subsidize it, then the situation will just become worse. And what are you going to do when there's no fish left? Her answer? Well, then we'll just have to eat tinned fish, won't we? I'm like, where do you think the fish in the tins come from? Yeah, we're not going to survive this century very easily with the average person being about this well informed, which unfortunately seems to be the case. Hopefully our brain boys make an AI to run our world and keep us in check. Wow, that last sentence there took us into a turn for AI. All the videos I've been seeing have been against it. But yeah, with people like this around and with that kind of logic, I can see why people would want to trust AI more than the people around us. We have no fish? Let them eat tinned fish. Ugh, my goodness. Story 13. After listening to my father rail against some fake political moral panic, I realized that he was incensed by something that happened on the show he watched the previous night, and not something that happened in reality. I realized then, I was 10 at the time, he was 40, that he couldn't tell the difference between fiction and nonfiction. He believed that it was illegal to say or show untrue things on television. In all the years that followed, he never learned better, though once the internet came around, he insisted that that was all fraudulent. So much so that if a news program had the same story both on television and online, the very existence of the online story made the television story untrue and was violating the law, since it was illegal to say or show untrue things on television. In addition to this, I learned that he was functionally illiterate. Now that is just sad. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video, and have a wonderful day. Story 14. My classmate's parents or grandparents' inheritance bought him a house in Mumbai just because he wanted to move there for his 3-year degree. If you guys don't know, Mumbai is like Manhattan of India. Expensive rents and jam-packed with one-percenters. When he moved to Germany, his dad bought him a condo there. Imagine the conversion rates of euros to INR. Now, we're well off too, but not like this guy. When I wanted to move to Berlin for a few months, I asked him about rent and process in decent but affordable areas. He straight up told me, why can't my dad just buy a house next door? It's simpler than all this. Thankfully, his ignorance wasn't coupled with arrogance. Story 15. One of my friends fantasized about having 10 kids while also being an actress. When I I asked her about her kids, she said she'd just get a nanny to take care of them and that she didn't need to worry because they'd still love her. I hope she grew out of that. Kind of sounds like my mom. She's a CFO and the only income in our family, so she worked a lot when growing up. She would leave for work at 8 a.m. and come home at 9 to 10 p.m. Her only real interactions were when she would say goodnight to me or on the weekends. Now she wonders why we aren't close. Story 16. An example of myself. I had thought upon entering college that I could feasibly earn a living and be comfortable through just working in music. I thought that performing music, playing music, and selling my own music would be enough to afford a house, a car, groceries, and all of life's necessities. Let's just say I haven't quite arrived at that point yet. Been down that route myself. Probably gave up too early, but I just couldn't see it being viable. Lots of friends are still surfing sofas for 10-minute gigs into their 40s. Oh, this could have been me if I had stuck with that route. I love playing music. I love writing music, but I just don't see a feasible way of earning a middle-class living with that kind of work. It's like you either hit it big or it becomes a hobby. And there's so much more you have to learn as well. You can't just be a musician. You have to market yourself. You have to know the internet to make a website and how to deal with all the different places to post your music. You have to learn how and when to post your music. It's definitely a different landscape. Story 17. My son was 3 days away from when his credit card bill was due and needed to borrow money, which was fine. He expressed his relief that I gave him the loan, saying, "I was afraid they'd cut off the card and not let me buy groceries this week if I didn't pay the balance." In other words, he's never let the balance roll over, just as I taught him, but he has no clue that he can actually let the balance roll over or pay a portion of the bill and he'll be charged the rate plus a fee. I think I'm not going to tell him about that part. Tell him nothing and he'll have an 800 by the time it matters. Thankfully, this is a story where not knowing works in your favor. I'm glad there's someone looking out for him in this situation. Hopefully, by the time he knows the real deal, he'll have the habit of paying off his balance ingrained. This credit rating is going to be awesome. Story 18. I live in a part of the country with some of the lowest cost of living. I was barely making it financially, and after paying my bills, car insurance, etc., I had $125 to eat and buy gas for the rest of the month. I live in a rural area where public transportation isn't a thing. One night, I'm at my sister's house, and she's telling me I need to go ahead and move because it's just not possible to raise a family around here on $90,000 a year. That's basically true if you live on Long Island, sadly, but it's not a low cost of living here. Story 19. One year for Christmas, I custom-made a board game for my girlfriend where the theme was about her going on as many holidays, vacations as possible. The entire thing was full of references to her friends and family with a bunch of in-jokes. Several people said I should try to mass-produce and sell it. It's like, who the heck do you think is gonna buy a game themed about some random person they've never heard of? Oh my gosh, I hope she appreciated that gift. That's amazing. Story 20. I worked for a very sheltered and entitled mother as a nanny. Shortly after I got hired, she called me at 3 a.m. asking me to come in because the baby wouldn't stop crying. When she said no, she responded with, "But you're the nanny." And that was a constant thing. At one point, she got sick of breastfeeding and asked if I could start nursing. All of this was very casual too, like she wasn't really mean about it. Was this girl raised by a nanny? Is this what she thinks it's going to be like being a mother? What is this woman's career that she hires a nanny for this? Is she paying for it? Are her parents paying for it? Does this woman even want to be a mother? Story 21. A dude, 18 years old, in boot camp got a letter from home and I can see he's agitated. Being 22 and concerned for his well-being, I asked him if he wanted to talk about it. I'm thinking of a Dear John letter or the mom and dad divorcing letter. He dead butt told me that his younger brother got a Mercedes for his birthday and that he was ticked because he only got a BMW. Can't remember what I said, but I knew boot camp was gonna knock his dong in the dirt. It did. Story 22. Listening to a faulty new car story when it turned out that the woman, 42, was driving for 7 months with the handbrake on the whole time. A lot of times I drive for 10 miles with the emergency brake on. That doesn't say a lot for me, but it really doesn't say a lot for the emergency brake. That's not an emergency brake. It's an emergency make the car smell funny lever. Story 23. The other day, my 18-year-old brother-in-law got married to his high school sweetheart in a parking garage so that they can live off campus at college together. Girlfriend's now wife mother is an ordained minister. His parents, my in-laws, were very upset, and he couldn't understand why because it's just a fake marriage for school. Oh no, sweet boy, you are married. I just laughed and laughed. I love him dearly. He is dumb. In his defense, they're going to be eligible for a ton of financial aid because of this. Wow, other people were in on this fake marriage. I've heard of some people referring to these as starter marriages, but is that what they think this is? But it's true, there have been a lot of marriages of convenience in order to obtain benefits. I actually kind of think this kid knows what he's doing here. I don't know if this is a delusional person. Maybe he's just trying to game the system. Story 24. My mom was spontaneously in the city I live in and asked me to meet her for supper. I told her I was on the bus and it would take me 45 minutes to get to her, even though in a car it would be a 15-minute drive. She said, "Just tell your bus driver to bring you here now." She has no concept of how public transportation works. Yes, thank you all. Public, not pubic. To be fair, pubic transportation sounds a lot more complicated than public transportation. Story 25. My cousin is 47, and a couple years ago a relative died and left him $10,000. He'd always lived with my grandma and had a structured settlement of $400 a month from an accident he was in as a teenager. Into heavy substances, never employed, bumming around, living like a kid with an allowance. He then told me that he wanted to get a car, an apartment, and then wanted my advice on how to invest the rest of the $10K. Come on, man. $400 a month? He can't have been into very heavy pharmaceuticals at all. Story 26. A very privileged flatmate at uni tried to put a tin can of soup in our microwave. She had never cooked for herself before. I got to the microwave before it exploded. Bruh, one time my mid-20s sister turned on the microwave with nothing inside it because it needed to be cleaned. Like it was a frickin' oven. I had to explain to my post-college education sister that microwaves and ovens are not the same. I think this goes to show that there needs to be home ec classes in high school. I think if you called them something like the missing class or life lessons class, they would get more traction. Home ec sounds like something that's just for homemakers. This story is the literal definition between book smarts and street smarts. Story 27. I worked with a girl in her 20s who had her first ever official paycheck. She was beaming with excitement as she opened the envelope. A smile drops and she says, "Wait, what are these lines?" She had no idea what taxes were. We're taxed to work, to simply live somewhere, to buy things, to sell things, to flush things. Welcome to poverty, young girl in a low-paying career. Story 28. When my roommate, who never once paid for rent or groceries or anything, turned down the only job offer they have ever gotten in front of me twice. They were so desperate they called him twice, offering good pay during COVID, and he had the gall to say no in front of me. His excuse was, "Nah, I'm sure there's something better. $20 an hour is garbage in this city." Story 29. Me. I was 18 and living in my first apartment. I spent 15 minutes looking for a button on the trash chute. Didn't realize until the third time that I just needed to throw the trash down. I had lived with my parents until then, and they failed to teach me a lot of basic life necessities. Loved them, but man, I was stupid. Yep, we need life lesson classes in school. Maybe even earlier. Maybe even someone in college could clean up holding that kind of class. I have a suspicion that the people who need these classes won't think they need them, though. Story 30. When my girlfriend said to me that she was going to easily work 3 jobs at the same time. Oh man, I did 3 jobs, kitchen jobs, for like a month and a half when I took half a year off college. And I was a bit lost at the time. Man, it was freaking brutal. Never again. Story 31. My boss told me about a friend of his who told him of a life hack. She would get her bills in the mail, not pay them, and then wait a couple of months to pay. Then she would cry so the debt collectors would feel bad and waive the fees for not paying on time. That was her brilliant life hack. Story 32. When looking for somewhere to rent after university halls, one of my mates was annoyed because he didn't like like the lounge in the house his parents bought him outright to live in. In my defense, the black mold has basically caused the walls to start melting. Bought him a house. I don't even know this person, but I know for a fact that he has a very slappable face. Bought him a house for college. He got taken advantage of in college, I know it. Story 33. It's like free money in response to any kind of financing or borrowing. Car financing, student loans, credit cards, home equity, line of credit. It's only free money if you have no intent of ever paying it back, or you're planning on resurfacing with a new identity at some point. Story 34. A first-year college student of mine thought that assignment deadlines were guidelines. Nothing was handed in on time. She emailed me the night before her final exam to see if I'd take some of her late work. I told her heck no. She threatened to report me. I let her. She failed, got reprimanded, and was essentially expelled due to plagiarism. Story 35. What do you mean there's a global bike shortage? Can't you just order more? What do you mean that bike won't show up until August? Can't you just bump up the shipment date? No, we can't just order more. We can't just bump up the shipment date. If we could, we would. A fed-up bike shop employee. Wow. Absolutely no clue as to how shipment chains or the economy works. And no sympathy for the business owner. What a sense of entitlement. Story 36. My old roommate was only paying $25 on her credit cards every month, but was putting almost every purchase on them. I felt so bad explaining to her that she was now in credit card debt. You see, you now have massive amounts of life-changing and crippling debt. Story 37. At a national park, the park ranger says, "Stay on the trails. There are bears in the area." One lady says, "Isn't that dangerous? Why aren't they in their cages?" "Ma'am, we're not a zoo." Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.